Oh, hello there. So today we're in a little bit of a different setup. We're on the floor in my room, and that's intentional because we're talking about flat lays, but I specifically want to highlight how easy it is to do a flat lay at home with really not much equipment. Flat lays are a great way to test your photography and learn about lighting and composition and all the various photography techniques. I'm gonna walk you through some of the things that went into this flat lay because we've got Chris's new cards here, and I thought that they would be the perfect counterpart to create a flat lay around. If you don't know what flat lay is basically a form of product photography, but it can also be used in weddings. It can be used to do kind of like clothing or camping gear layouts or EDC layouts. The idea is to highlight a product or bring attention to something or even document something. In the case of what we're shooting today, we're shooting a product and we want to highlight that product. In other cases, your intention might be to document a process. Maybe you're working on a project, or again, you have all your camping gear laid out and you're trying to document all of the little individual pieces that you're bringing with you on your camping trip. In either case, your goal is to tell a story. The thing that makes a flat lay good is when you have items that supplement the object you're trying to shoot. In this case, the object is the cards, and the cards represent creativity. All of the objects that are around the cards are objects that represent my creativity. In this case, this is the GoPro I use, or these are pencils and sewing accessories and lenses and things that I use on a regular basis that are expressions of my own creativity. Then when it comes to actually laying it out, what I wanted to make sure was that there were layers to this composition. So you'll notice that the cards are kind of raised up a bit, and it's nothing fancy. I literally just put them on top of a bunch of erasers. But the idea there is that when I shoot it, I'm able to isolate it using depth of field so that all these little things like this key, these locks, this little piece of sawdust isn't gonna distract from the cards. When you're picking objects to supplement the object you're trying to shoot, you also wanna think about color. In this case, the cards are black and monochromatic. So I didn't wanna go out and pick bright, colorful objects because they would take away from the main thing that we're trying to shoot. In this case, I chose objects that had a variety of texture. I chose some fabric, which had this kind of really nice corrugated texture. I chose the GoPro and the lenses because they had this reflective nature that would capture some of the lights. And then I chose things like the sewing thread and the ribbon and this little piece of a case, I don't even know what it is, because it had a little bit more of a flat texture and again, wouldn't take away from the cards that we were trying to shoot. When it comes to laying it out, it's also important to think about the orientation of objects. If the cards are the main thing, then I want to make sure they're nice and square in my frame. And then everything else that kind of goes around it is on an angle, either to complement the cards or to kind of point towards the cards that are in the center of the frame. When it comes to setting up your flat lay, you kind of have to think of it as your own little mini studio environment. Like you're shooting this little vignette and you're trying to tell a story inside of this scene. My setup is really basic. I'm using a piece of found hardwood flooring on top of a stool that's just kind of in the middle of my room, and I'm using a single softbox light. Now to fill in the shadows, I'm also using this reflector over here. And now the reflector's not providing me with any light, but what it's doing is it's placed opposite of my main light source just to fill in the shadows so that I can pull some detail out of the texture and not have my shadows looking too dark. If you want to kind of one-up your lighting, you can go with something like this Nanlite Pavo tube, and the nice thing about it is that it's super versatile. So we can change the color temperature, we can change the brightness, or we can even put it into an RGB color mode. With objects in your scene that are reflective, like the lens on the GoPro, the RF lens, the Allen keys, as I'm moving the light around, it will actually catch the reflections of those objects. And even in the cards themselves, the nice thing is that there's some printing on them that has a little bit of a gloss to them. So depending on the orientation of your light, you could reposition it so that you could either see the text in the reflection or kind of hide it a little bit with the shadows. When it comes to shooting a flat lay, I'd recommend shooting either with a 50mm lens, an 85mm Oh my gosh. An 85mm lens or a 135mm lens. And the reason for that is the longer telephoto lenses will flatten out or compress your scene so that you don't get the edges of your photo looking too distorted. The nice thing about something like this Viltrox 85mm 1.8 lens is that one, it's super inexpensive. It's only about $300, and all the photos I'm showing you were shot on this lens. The other nice thing is that it has a lower aperture number of 1.8, and 1.8 allows you to really get that depth of field so that when you're focused on the cards, even though everything is relatively close together, the cards will be in focus, and then the actual background textures like the lock, the pencil shavings, the wood shavings, those will be out of focus so that they don't distract and take away from the cards. So that's pretty much all there is to flat lays. They're not too complicated, and they're a great way to get started learning about camera settings, learning about composition, and learning about how lighting affects the things in your scene. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, or hit the subscribe button. And if you do, I'll see you in the next one. I hope that's good. I hope that ending is good. Blech.